You know, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, the world looked very different. If you were to get something to eat, you probably grew it yourself or you bought it from somebody whose first name you knew. You knew the land it was grown on. The world has changed. But for some people, they're reclaiming that. And we're going to talk about that with an amazing guest right after this on the Manlihood Mancast.
You can be a man of courage, of honor, of integrity. You can be the father, the husband, the leader that your family and your community needs. This is the Manlihood Mancast. Here's your host, Josh Hatcher.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the Manlihood Mancast. I'm your host, Josh Hatcher. Listen, I am so excited about the work that we're doing here at Manlihood. Our podcast is growing. We've got more and more listeners tuning in from all over the world. And I've heard lots of great feedback from guys who are learning, who are growing, who are connecting with the work that we're doing. And it makes me really happy. If you are growing and learning and connecting with what we're doing, then you have a responsibility. That responsibility is to help share this with other men. So if you find an episode that you really resonate with, like this one, and you want to share it with somebody, please do that. Send them the link to listen to it. Send it in a private message or post it on their wall. Make sure you go to iTunes or Apple or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts at, and comment, like, share, subscribe, rate, review, all the things that you can do to help us elevate this message to more men. I appreciate it, and I'm really glad that you took the time to participate in the work that we're doing. Listen, today's guest is Drew Grimm. He and his wife have a homestead where they not only grow the food that they use to feed their family, but they also homeschool their family, and they work together to educate others on how to live a simpler life off the land the way that people used to. And this conversation with Drew is phenomenal, and I think you really definitely are going to learn something from it.
Drew, it's great to have you on the show, man. I've been following the work that you're doing with the Schoolhouse life, and it's really intriguing to me. You know, we used to do a little bit of homesteading ourselves, and, you know, now that life has kind of gotten busy and there's not as many kids at home to help with the chores, things have changed a little bit. But I love the work you're doing, and I think our listeners would be really intrigued by this too. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so we sit on 15 acres in North Carolina. So we consider it kind of a small homestead. We have sheep, chickens for eggs and for meat, and just our goal is to kind of provide enough food for ourselves. Our overall kind of mission statement is self-sufficiency through community. So which is kind of like an oxymoron, and I realize that, but ultimately, you can't have true self-sufficiency without having a community of people to be working with. So that's kind of where we focus on, is teaching people skills in homesteading, natural medicine, and homeschooling. So kind of an overall, if you're a homesteader, you're generally doing most of those things in some degree or another. Doing it for, almost 20 years now. So it started kind of just on the steps of our apartment and growing stuff in pots, and, slowly purchased a house and then purchased land, and, kind of have gotten to this spot where I feel like I still have acreage I haven't used yet. So I feel like I'm in a good spot.
That's awesome. You got some room to grow then.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, you talked about the animals that you grow. Do you raise animals for meat as well as eggs and things like that?
Yeah. So kind of within our philosophy is if you consume meat, then you should be responsible for the death of that meat, or be a participant in the whole process, from not meaning that every piece of meat you consume you've killed yourself, but understanding that process, understanding what it means to watch a lamb be born in the spring and then in the fall harvest that lamb, and, going through that process of cows, sheep, chickens. So we have Jacob sheep, which are sheep that actually the legend has it, I don't know how accurate it is, but legend has it comes from the sheep of the Bible, like the Jacob sheep, with the spots. And so it's a cool heritage breed. They generally have like 4 or 6 horns, so they're kind of a little funky looking, which is why I wanted them. But we've mixed them with other breeds to kind of have our own breed on the homestead. And so we use them for wool and for meat. And then the chickens, we raise like chickens. Some people don't know, but like a meat chicken takes about 6 to 8 weeks from the time you receive it to the time it's ready for butchering. So we run a few of those throughout the summer to keep the freezer full. We call it freezer camp. So on the homestead, if you get signed up for freezer camp, you're in trouble.
Yeah, we our family raised meat rabbits and meat chickens for many years, and I did a lot of the processing myself, and got to the place where you do 5 or 6 of them, and you're kind of like, okay, I think I'm I'm done for the day.
Yeah.
And now, if it was one a day, that would be different than doing like a whole big freezer camp harvest all at once.
Right.
But we ended up finding like a local Amish group where the women would all get together on Wednesdays and they would just process everybody's animals that they brought up. And that was like for the cost, and then me not having to clean up the mess, So, I mean, I was still active. Like I was a part of seeing it happen, but it was a little less stress and mess for me. So for us, that worked really well. But I always wanted to get into, some bigger livestock, but we only have about 1.5 acres. So
yeah. You could probably do a few sheep, but you're not getting into cows on 1.5 acres. But yeah, man, I like that idea though. That again, like that community aspect, a lot of times on like slaughtering, we'll get together with other families, and the biggest we've ever done is like 300 chickens in one day, but it was like 3 families. That was a long day.
Yeah. It is, but it's kind of, there's something to it, man. There's nothing like eating a meal and knowing that everything on your table came from the backyard,
Right. Yeah. That was actually last night we had that, like everything on our plate. We had cauliflower, green beans, and chicken. Everything on our plate had come from our farm. And it was kind of like, every once in a while I'll like look up from a meal and be like, hey guys, everything came from the farm, and that's kind of it's a cool feeling for sure.
Yeah. I think when you talked about it being a part of your philosophy of, having, if you're going to eat meat, have that responsibility of understanding the process and being a part of the process. Like I think that, when you look at what's happening at some of these factory farms, the chickens, the way they're raised, or the cow, it's almost kind of heartbreaking. It doesn't make me go full on PETA and say I'm going to avoid meat forever, but It definitely makes me rethink things,
Yeah. Yeah. The way we raise our animals, I tell people like I'm about this far, like, a few inches away from the same philosophy as a vegan, like if vegans would stop being angry for a little bit and hear me out, like we're pretty similar. Like, we raise our animals. My belief is that a sheep knows how to be a sheep better than I can tell a sheep to be a sheep. The same for any animal on our farm. So we run our flocks as a closed flock. So the males and the females are together all the time. The moms raise the babies, and the babies stay with the moms until they go to freezer camp, or, we sell them. But everything, our goal is always to let the animal be the animal to like the full extent, instead of like, those confinement lots that you see like out west where it's just, animals standing on dirt being treated very horribly their whole lives.
Yeah, I think there's a degree of compassion to it, and I think it makes you appreciate the process more when you're involved in it. So tell me, you've got how many kids do you have on the homestead?
We've got 4.
Yeah. Are they pretty involved with the work that you're doing as well?
They are, some days joyfully, some days reluctantly.
Yeah.
We have a 5-year-old boy, and then 10, 12, and 16-year-old girls. And part of the reason we wanted to do homesteading and farming was for that responsibility factor of like them knowing what hard work is, and being connected to the land and having the opportunity to just go poke around in the mud or watch a bug walk across, a fence post or something, like let the kids be kids. But also the aspect of like letting them have responsibility. So like my 10 and 12-year-old are completely in charge of the chickens. So they like manage the chickens. And then when there's extra eggs, they have a sign they put up down by the road and they sell the eggs and they get to keep a percentage of that. It's funny because they put it up and they thought they were going to get to keep all the money. Then I was like, whoa, there's like a feed bill, and then there's taxes, and then they're like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, and then you got to set some aside for God too. And they're like, hold on, what? Like they watch their little paycheck dwindle down, but ultimately that's the reality of it. So like just teaching them homeschooling is kind of, for us, is those kind of moments of like letting them run a egg selling enterprise and, be a participant in all the ways that money gets distributed and that kind of thing.
Yeah. My daughter started her first job a couple of years ago. She's working at Arby's and she gets her first paycheck and she sees how much the government takes out and she's like,
right.
Wait, what's going on here? I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to adulthood,
Right. Yeah.
So as you homeschool, do you guys use a traditional curriculum or do you pretty much kind of do the unschooling route or maybe a little bit of both?
Yeah. My wife handles most of it. But I come in on like kind of the farm end of things. We don't really use a curriculum. She kind of like picks and chooses curriculums, like little aspects of it. And then I would say we're kind of like Charlotte Mason, Waldorf, and unschooling kind of all combined. So it's kind of, if it's a nice day outside, the kids are outside all day. If it's like raining or like being in North Carolina, like this past couple of weeks, it was like 90 plus degrees and like 100% humidity. So, like we just stay inside and they do more of their schoolwork then. So it's not like we're trying to check boxes on like, are they getting a certain thing done? Our overall goal is to produce really good human beings that will make a difference in this world. Not necessarily so much of replicating the school system or, being worried if they have, I don't know, like all the presidents memorized. Like ultimately you can be a really good person and not know that, so. You can, oh, go ahead.
You could be bad at trigonometry and, still be a good person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And nowadays, like there's this whole, like, I struggle with it more than my wife does, but of like a lot of information you can just Google now. Like, do we really need to store that information in our brain, or could we put something else in there and just Google like who was the fourth president? Like I don't.
So my kids did a virtual charter school, which is kind of like a public school at home. Okay. Almost all the way through. My 16-year-old is now going to the public school. She wants to take advantage of, they have like a nursing VOTEC program. And so we like, okay, that'll work good for you. So she's doing that, but all the way through their education, they had, some curriculum and teachers and work they would do. But like, honestly, if I look back, what they learned most was in the times that we were actually doing stuff together that had nothing to do with their
right.
With their schoolwork. And, I think about a lot of people right now are really struggling with the education system. They're now that all these kids are now forced to go to virtual charter or virtual schooling at home, and they're hearing what's actually happening in the classroom, you know, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't sign up for this, you know, like that's, so I think that there's a lot of dads out there who are like, I kind of want to do this. I kind of want my kids to be better kids. I want them to grow up to be better humans than what is being produced out of this, you know, just like the factory farms, right? You know, it's the same concept.
I mean, it is, that's a really sad way to put it, but I think it's a reality too, is like the school system is set to like produce workers that will work 9 to 5, you know, like come in, don't ask to go to the bathroom, take your lunch when we tell you, and then go home and do the same thing the next day. Like it's a difficult reality, but I do see it as like, that's the main reason why we do homeschool, is because of that element of we're looking for our kids to make an impact in the world. And I think that, not that you can't do that going to public school, I just think it's maybe a little bit more difficult if you don't have that room to breathe and think way outside of the box. Like, I don't know, in an element, like I went to public school my whole life, but like, what if I would have been able to completely think or lay down in a field and just dream for a couple of days, you know, like, I don't know, who knows what difference there would have been.
I kind of had this cool opportunity where I got plugged into this, like, I had like a learning disability and I was like considered quote unquote gifted at the same time. So I kind of got into this special education program where one day a week I would get to get out of all my classes and go and basically do unschooling. You know, they basically kind of, what do you want to learn about today? What do you want to work on? So I got to, you know, develop the things that I cared about. And honestly, I learned more outside of my classroom than I ever would have in the classroom. And I wish, honestly, like every kid should have an IEP.
Right.
You know, they should have an individual education plan for every kid. And I was fortunate in that regard. And it breaks my heart to see the way that it's just like, you know, hey, let's make you all the same. Let's make you homogenous. And then on top of that, the culture of the kids itself, you know, like people are always like, have you ever heard this argument? Like, aren't you worried about your kids being more, aren't you worried about their socialization? Like, I'm sure you've got a good response to that. Right? Yeah.
I mean, I think the reality is there's nowhere else that you see human beings interacting with like one age group. You know, like this like idea that we're going to take all the 8-year-olds and put them in a classroom and that's it. Like they won't interact with anybody else. In real life, we're acting or interacting with people from a full spectrum of ages. You know, so I struggle with it sometimes because some of my friends who also have homeschool kids, like, you know, there'll be a 12-year-old that'll like sit down next to me while we're having dinner and, you know, want to have a conversation about some adult topic. And I'm like, you know, everyone's like, why is this 12-year-old talking to me? But they haven't been told that it's not okay to talk with someone older than them or younger than them, you know, like, and a lot of times the conversations are great and interesting. And the 12-year-old knows something that I had no idea about, you know, but yeah, so we have like a couple of co-ops and our kids, pre-pandemic in the old world, we used to travel a lot and, you know, our kids have been to Israel and Canada and, you know, all over the place in the United States and have experienced different cultures and know how to interact with people different ways that, you know, you can't learn that kind of socialization in a regular school setting. So that's my long-winded explanation to people.
No, I think it's right on. I feel, like I said, I can relate to it really well because our kids were the same way. You know, they loved babies and they loved old people and everybody in between, you know, rather than just like only holding up with people that were just like them. And I think, you know, now most of them are adults. I'm about to be a grandpa, you know, you know, they're, and I can see that, you know, I feel like we made that right decision, that right call to do it that way because they turned out to be really great people, you know, and I'm not saying that great people can't come out of the public school system. That does too. But I feel really confident in our decision to be different than everybody else. I think it was a wise thing. And I think more people are waking up to the fact that, hey, maybe this isn't as hard or as bad as I thought it was going to be,
Yeah. I think that's like a good, what you're saying. And I think what I'm ultimately saying is it's a good encouragement to dads who are maybe on the fence that are like, I'm not sure I can pull this off, there's a lot of value in homeschooling. Like, it is something that you can do. It's not super difficult. You don't have to replicate regular school. I talk to dads every once in a while that are kind of on the fence, and it's like, just give it a try. I mean, worst case, you send the kids back to public school. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's worth a shot, and they usually don't end up getting further behind as long as,
right,
you've got some kind of plan. I think you can make it work. So,
yeah.
Now, do you do the homestead and your farm? Is that full time, or do you work outside the home as well? Or
so I do not work. Well, that's a difficult answer. So we have a few different revenue streams, I guess is the best way to say it. We have my wife and I are kind of serial entrepreneurs. So we have a natural health and wellness business. We sell essential oils and teach people how to use essential oils and for like natural health. That's primarily how we make our income. So it's like sales basically. And then we do homestead coaching. So if people are interested in homesteading or, need a little bit of extra help, we have a program, we do that. And then we have a physical location. We call it the Schoolhouse. It's like an old 1940s building. This is like the ceiling of it right there. That we run we call it a community market. It's kind of like a farmer's market. And then we teach physical classes out of this location too. So on like homesteading type of topics, like folk, things like I'm trying to think. We're getting ready to do one on like longbow making, or we'll do one on like fermenting or pressure canning or natural medicine kind of thing. So stuff that people can come physically to.
And the reason I ask that is primarily because in my mind, I have this picture that I've been thinking about where, you look back 100 years ago and, kids went to school in the cooler months, after harvest pretty much in the winter. And then the rest of the time they were actually working with their dads in the field and with their moms in around the house and in the kitchen and doing those things and learning kind of on the job. And I think that, it sounds like with the career that you have, right, with that as your career, your kids can be alongside and with you, and you probably get a little bit more time with them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as a family unit, we're together pretty much 24/7. And that definitely has its pros and cons. I think that, but I think ultimately, originally, that is the way that we're meant to be. Like, kind of like you're saying, like this idea of spending the summers together, or just spending life together it's huge. And I owned a business doing home theaters and security systems, which is like a funny kind of juxtaposition to what I do now. But, and I was gone a lot and, all day, every day, long hours. And it took a while to get used to coming home and like being there all the time. My wife even would be like, hey, it's just strange, like we have this routine and now you're here, and like, how do we fit you into this routine, and it's been, I guess 5 years ago I sold that business. So it's been a while now, but there is kind of like a learning curve of everybody being home together. I'm sure with like the pandemic, I feel like a lot of people kind of got thrust into that, like everybody being together at the same time. But yeah. I really like it now. It also gives us the flexibility to like go places and do things, and we can work remotely. So it's really nice that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember I worked from home for a little while, and my wife was home teaching the kids, and I was involved with some of that as well. There was a time, man, where it was just like like you almost start to get on each other's nerves, you know, and you have to kind of, okay, let's get this figured out. But it was, if I look back, like, dude, those are the moments that I actually can kind of cherish, because we had that freedom to pack up and go to, you know, the zoo, or, you know, go for a swim at the lake and not interrupt everything else. And, you know, honestly, I think that time that you can have with your kids is so important. I think a lot of dads just like check the box, you know, I went to work, I made the money so that you have a house to live in. Now leave me alone.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, like, there was a time after I sold my business and I came home, there was like this, and I tell a lot of dads this because I know some other dads that have come home to be stay-at-home dads. I think as men, we put our identity in that earning income, that producing. And when you take that away, then all of a sudden, like, you kind of don't have an identity, you know, like, yeah, I sold my business and I had some revenue coming from that, but ultimately my wife was working her other business and producing the majority of the income. And I was just kind of floating there for a while, you know, and it was like, I really had to do some soul searching, like, okay, my identity is not in what I make, but, you know, who I am for my family. And that was a really tough couple of months of like trying to turn that around, you know. But I tell a lot of dads, like, once you can kind of realize that, and I've seen other dads go into like a depression over it, you know, like that. Once you can kind of realize it and work through it, then, you know, you've got something. But you kind of have to, as a society, I think that's just what we expect and what society expects of us.
Yeah. And I think that there is you know, like, I think there's some truth to the idea that as a man, your job is to provide, right? I think there's truth to that concept, but I think that we get hung up on it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like it's still something that you do, not who you are. And so, when there's a shift or a time period where, dude, I've been there. And that was a really hard time. I actually had to sit down and write out, like, I remember in my journal, I wrote at the top of the page, who am I?
Right.
I just took the time to like, actually like identify it, because without it, I was kind of lost for a little bit, you know?
Okay. So, you know, then too. Yeah. 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 So,
with your kids doing homeschooling, helping out around the homestead, what do you think is probably the most rewarding part of this life that you are involved with? This kind of, it's almost like a rogue, and it shouldn't be rogue. Like, this is the way everybody lived for like hundreds, thousands of years, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think is the most rewarding part of it for you?
I think it's being connected to the land and being connected to the creator. And that's originally, like, I kind of soul search sometimes, like, what got me started on this. And for me, like, when you look at the Bible, the people of the Bible were always agricultural people. The feasts and festivals of the Bible are all based around agricultural elements, and, you know, taking a harvest in or planting a harvest, or the darkest day of the year, you know, is like Hanukkah. Like, everything is based around this idea of the earth and the seasons and all of that. And having that connection and being able to, like, I plant not enough wheat to like sustain us, but I plant enough wheat so that in the spring I can harvest it at the time of Passover, just so that I can experience harvesting wheat during Passover, when, you know, the people of the Bible would have done it. So, like, to me, I think that's the most fulfilling for me, is that participating in the land with my family, like being connected. Like, I don't take for granted at all that I get to spend every day, all day with my family. Like, that's, to me, huge. And really, like, I've made an effort to design this life, my wife and I together, to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you talked about when you guys first started, you started growing just on the steps to your apartment. So let's say that there's some guys out there and they're like, hey, look, like, I'm in the middle of the city, you know, but they want a part of it. Like, where would they start if they're like, hey, look, I can't have a full homestead, but I want to start with something. Like, what would you recommend?
I'd recommend like finding first of all, finding a food that you like. Like a lot of times people will plant foods that they don't like. And, like just because, hey, like you don't really think about it at first, and then get a pot and grow something in a pot, like grow one tomato and experience the beauty of that one tomato plant, or grow some lettuce. Lettuce will grow like anywhere. You could grow lettuce inside your house in a pot in a south facing window if you're in the northern hemisphere. So there's always something that you can grow. You can also get grow lights like from a hardware store and put those above, like if you don't even have a window, but experience growing something and get connected with a community of people that have been growing and know how to grow, and just start learning. But, it's kind of like cliche, but get your hands dirty, like literally like start with something and see. Usually once you grow something and eat it, then you're kind of hooked.
That kind of makes me think of the other end of that too, is like, we're at the place where, we have a small garden. It's just enough for us for right now. We can't grow meat with our lives in the way that our lives are structured right now. But I always think about like, my wife went to the grocery store the other day, and our grocery store is a chain, but they have a butcher that is very conscientious,
Nice.
And every year when the fair comes around, he buys, the meat from the fair.
Oh,
and
wow.
so we had like fair pork chops last night from from our local county fair. But take the time to get to know a butcher, get to know a farmer, maybe get your meat from them rather than from that system that is going to be pumped full of who knows what they've pumped into that meat. I think there's something valuable to just getting it as local and as fresh and as natural as you can.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, like if you can get, like you said, food from your community that was grown in your community, that is experiencing whatever stresses are going on in your community. There's a newer study that shows that if you take vegetable seeds and put them in your mouth and then plant them, those plants grow more of the minerals and vitamins that your body is deficient in. Which to me just goes to show that like nature and the earth knows way more than science knows. And, modern day science, so that when we eat and consume food that is coming from our community, it's more likely to be helping us be healthier as human beings, both physically and spiritually, than, I forget the exact number, but like if you get a pound of ground meat from the grocery store, your average grocery store, it has something like roughly 200 cows in one pound of ground meat has been mixed together, that's just not healthy. And I think in general, that's why we see our society, the world at large, declining both physically and spiritually, is because we've lost that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no doubt that that's something I think we've got to be thinking about, and the other end of it, I think of, just from that perspective of masculinity, right? You go and you buy, a lot of people aren't even buying a pound of ground beef. They're buying a meal that's already made,
right?
And so, they're buying like a freezer meal, or they're going to a restaurant that is, a fast food place, and like 90% of it isn't even meat. It's soy or something else. And that has an impact on testosterone and hormones and, all kinds of things. And I think we just completely need to rethink, like what are we putting in our body and why are we putting it there? And does it matter? And I think it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard someone else say like you are, you've heard the one, like you are what you eat, but to take it farther, you are what your farmer eats. So like, in other words, like economically and physically, like we should be taking responsibility. Like, can the farmer we buy from, can he and does he consume his own, or she, consume and produce their own food? Like if we have a soybean farmer or a cow farmer out in where these giant lots are they consuming that food, and can they afford to, is another element of it. But yeah, if we can kind of go back to the small scale farmers, my dream locally is if we could all be able to walk to get all the food that we need from local farmers in the area. I know that's like a utopian dream, but you got to dream something, right? But yeah.
Another thing I always love to do, and I kind of grew up this way too, is, my mom was really good at growing green beans. We have a big garden and we grow a handful of things, but we could never get corn to grow on our property, but she could grow green beans. So she would grow green beans and grow enough for like the whole town.
Yeah.
And then she'd go to the farmer that did the corn and she'd say, here's a bushel of green beans for a bushel of corn.
Yeah.
And like you talk about that community, man, like there's something really valuable in that as well. If you're good at doing something, somebody else is good at doing the other thing. Let's work together,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
Do you find yourself doing any bartering with locals with the work you're doing there?
We do. Within our like kind of farming friend community, a lot of times it's a lot of like, hey, I've got extra, you can have it. Or, we all kind of take care of each other. I have a friend that has a dairy, so I get milk from him, and honestly, like I pay him for it at this point. But I love the idea of trading. And when we can trade, like I had extra fence posts from a project I did, so I traded him fence post for milk, so like, yeah, any kind of trading we can do, we do.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that concept as well. I think that's kind of fun. Yeah. I've done a lot of bartering over the years, build a website for a guy in exchange for something else. And, there's always a lot of joy in that process, when you're like, hey, I got this for, this and something kind of fun.
Yeah. And I love the idea that it also kind of like keeps Uncle Sam out of your pocket,
I think you're supposed to report it. I have no idea how you would report it, but
I don't
know. So I like to ask all my guests these questions. I like to, I think it kind of gives us a cool insight into you and your life and how you think. So that first question is this: if young Drew, 6, 7 years old, walks in the room and you've got the opportunity to speak into his life and tell him anything, what is it you're going to tell him? What do you want him to know?
I would tell him to continue where he's going, but to experience nature and to look for wonder, like look for wonder in the small things. But I mean, I'm really happy where I am in my life, and it's like, I wouldn't want to get things off course, so like, growing up, I was in nature a lot, did a lot of backpacking, a lot of hiking. And I think that's kind of what got me to where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a common theme too. A lot of guys are like, hey, well, if I tell him some things, then I didn't have the hard experiences, or I didn't have this experience, and then I screwed it all up, Like I needed that hardship to learn something,
Yeah, we've all watched too many like Terminator and Back to the Future. So you don't want to mess up the time continuum.
No, but I think that's good advice though, to encourage him to experience the wonder.
Yeah.
What in your life now, I know you talk about how you love being connected to the land. When's the last time you really had a wonder moment?
So we take Saturdays are our Sabbath. So we like turn our phone off. We don't buy, we don't sell. Generally, we don't leave the homestead. Like we completely check out from the world on Saturdays. And that's kind of our spiritual day. So last Saturday, my son and I went hiking in the woods and found this like massive hill that was all covered in moss. And him and I just sat there in the middle of the woods and, just like, automatically he's talking about the fairies that he's 5. So he's talking about the fairies that live in this mound. And, I'm just there. It was kind of like a surreal moment of just being in the woods. That was the goal of it. I find like if you can kind of like forest bathing almost, like go out in the woods and just be surrounded. But I would say that was the last time have been really connected.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, we just got back on vacation from North Carolina. We went down to the Outer Banks, and
Oh, nice.
It was kind of a crazy situation. I was actually sick. I got bit by a tick, and nature went against me there. But but I did get a little bit of time on the beach, and I remember walking out like right about sunset and just like seeing the vastness of it. And you realize like as far as I can see is water, and right now like it's at like my ankles, but like a mile out, it's probably deeper than I could ever even imagine, and like that just, that's a cool wonder moment for me. So I can kind of relate to that, those little moments like that,
Yeah, I would definitely say I grew up in Tampa, Florida. So like I was always at the ocean. So yeah, those ocean moments, I'm a sucker for those. Those get me every time.
Yeah. I'm a hill jack myself too. So I get a few of those up here all the time as well, but
yeah.
So, then the next question I like to ask is this. So for the guys that are listening today, what is your best advice for them?
I would say I'm going to sound like a broken record, but get more connected to your food, ultimately to the earth, to your family. To me, health begins with healthy soil, healthy food, healthy spiritual life. All of that is connected together. So, know where your food comes from, take responsibility for where your food comes from, and plant something and grow it, so that you can experience the potential of a seed to a fruit or a vegetable.
Awesome. I think that's excellent advice. And I think that we could all benefit from that, from the beauty of that, definitely. Yeah. Awesome. So if I've got guys that want to connect with you and we want to send them your way so they can learn from you, learn from what you're doing, what's the best way for them to get plugged in?
Yeah, you could go to the schoolhouselife.com. And then we also have a podcast called The Schoolhouse Life. And there's a link at schoolhouselife.com to get connected with that. And we have a Facebook group that's The Schoolhouse Life. So, any of those are great ways to connect.
Awesome. So if guys have questions about, natural health or homeschooling or homesteading or growing stuff in their apartment window, they could ask you and connect with your community there, right?
For sure. Yeah, that's a great place to connect.
Awesome. Drew, I've really appreciated having you on the show today. And next time I come to North Carolina, I might kind of swing out your way. Maybe we'll get some lunch or something. That'd be kind of cool to see your homestead and check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Do it.
Awesome. Let's make it happen. Awesome. Good talking to you, friend. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Again, let's give it up. A big round of applause for Drew Grimm. If you appreciate the work he's doing, go check out the links that I have in the show notes where you can click through and show him some love on his social media, subscribe to his channels, join his group, learn from the work that he's doing, because Drew is doing some good stuff. We want to support him. Listen, I appreciate all of you guys tuning in and listening to the Manlihood Mancast and the work that we're doing here. You guys matter to me. You really do. I can't tell you how much it means to me to know that I've got people that love and appreciate the work we're doing as much as I do. So thank you for sharing and for telling your friends about it. Let's keep this going. Let's make this something special. Anyway, lots more interviews on the way, guys. We've got some amazing interviews coming in that you guys are just not going to believe. They're going to blow your mind, and they're awesome stuff. But for now, I think we're going to close off. Listen, I love you. I care about you, and I'll see you next time.
If you want to be a better man, check out our website, manlihood.com, for blogs, videos, and more from our Manlihood team. And you can also join our private Facebook group, Manlihood Man Cave, where you can meet up with a band of brothers who will challenge you and help you on your journey of manhood. This episode is produced by Hatcher Media for manlihood.com. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to the show. Tune in again for more of the Manlihood Mancast.